Let's go celebrate New Year's, he said. Let's go on a cruise, he said. Let's film an episode on the boat, he said.
Hey, maybe no one's going to notice.
Ron, people are definitely going to notice.
Uh, well, does that mean we're not going to do the birthdays?
I know somebody who's not going to have a birthday.
Ah!
It's time for the Post-Mortem Report with your hosts Ronald McGilray and Michael Schotter. Each month, these sultans of speculative fiction take a break from bending reality to ask one burning question. What cool stuff got buried in the social media graveyard while people were busy yelling at each other? Well, there's only one way to find out, so let's dig into it.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Post-Mortem Report. I'm your co-host, Michael Schotter.
And I'm Ronald McGilvray, and we wish you a happy new year, and welcome to episode 6.
Woohoo!
Yeah.
My arms are tired from all that hanging.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
You seem to have dried off pretty quick.
Yeah, my rage has cooled down considerably as well. So I think we can move forward and get past any mistakes that were made.
Perfect. Perfect. I'm glad when I landed, I hit that one person. So saved my any injuries.
Yeah, that was really convenient of them to fall right there and break
me.
your fall.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that wave just washed them away. But we survived, and that's what's important.
Yes, indeed. Just in time for the sequel.
Exactly. Because if we hadn't survived, no one would ever find out about the birthdays.
That's true. That's very true. Well, speaking of which, we've got a lot of birthdays again. You ready for another marathon of festive celebration?
Absolutely. Nothing gives me greater pleasure than to share the birthdays to everybody out there and to wish everyone a happy birthday.
All right.
Shall we get started?
Let's do it.
All right. So a happy birthday to Joshua MacMillan, whose birthday was November 4th, the author of The Death House. Another birthday, Christina Pfiffer, her birthday November 5th, of the Mothers of Mayhem fame. Donnie Goodman, his birthday is also on November 5th. He has an interview on Terrifying Tomes of Terror that you should check out. Greg Gifune, November 5th, author of Devil's Breath and God Machine. Gord Rollo, November 12th as well, Between the Devil and the Deep Blue Sea. Happy birthday to Gord. Lee Richmond has a birthday, November 13th, whose book Medley of the Macabre was co-written with Mark Green. Happy birthday, Lee. Wynter Adams, her birthday November 13th. Hopefully it doesn't fall on a Friday for you. Author of Scandal After Dark. Rowland Bercy Jr., November 17th, of the pre-Thanksgiving stress disorder fame. Happy birthday to Rowland. Another birthday, Corrina Morse, November 18th, of No Remorse Reviews. Happy birthday to Corrina. Keith Adam Luethke, November 18th. His book, Bigfoot Prey, hit number 36 on Amazon. I don't know, it's probably even higher now.
Coincidentally, Bigfoot's shoe size.
There you go. Another birthday, Jennifer Sullivan, November 19th, reviewer for Kendall Reviews. Happy birthday to Jennifer. Ronald Kelly, another birthday. A lot of November babies. His birthday is November 20th. His book, Southern Fried and Horrified, is out. So if people are looking for a book about writing,
yeah, congrats to him on finally retiring from his day job. Also, I believe he retired at the end of the year officially and is now a full-time writer, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah, I think today was his final day, which would naturally be today that you're watching the show.
Don't summon Al Roker. We've already been through this.
There you go. Brandy Carroll, her birthday November 20th, of Horror Nerds. If you guys haven't checked out that group, definitely go check it out. There's also Horror Nerds reviews. Check that one out as well. Armand Rosamilia, November 21st, his birthday. Make Pretend. You want to make sure to check that.
Yeah, and his newest short fiction collection, Who Can Say, has come out as well.
It's volume 3, I think, isn't it, of his shorts?
Indeed, he's got 3 of those now. Yeah,
it's a prolific fella.
Mm-hmm.
So happy birthday, Armand.
You're not going to mention his sidekick?
Well, he hasn't liked any of my stuff lately.
Oh, okay, yeah, screw that guy.
But we can give him a shout out.
Okay. Happy birthday, Chuck, I guess.
You should like more of our stuff and leave a comment on our
you social media slacker
video. Yeah. So happy birthday, Chuck. Lenore Sagaskie, November 25th. She has a trailer for her short film Rage that's up. So everyone should go and check that out. Leave a comment. Happy birthday to Lenore. And to Marion Phillips-Van, November 29th. She's been very supportive of a lot of my stuff and my posts. I appreciate all her support. I wish her all the best for her birthday. Hope all of them had a great birthday, had a great November, and wishing you all the best for the remainder, or for actually the year ahead, from us at the Postmortem Report.
Excellent. Take a deep breath.
Exhausted.
I don't blame you. That was quite the marathon. Well done.
There's a lot of partying going on in November.
Yeah, no doubt.
I haven't gotten any invitations yet, though.
Oh, well, I'm sure you'll make it into everybody's invitation pool next year.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Well, speaking of partying, there was another recent festive occurrence, associated with New Year's that I think we should let people know about, although it's a little too late for them to participate in it. It's never too late for Godzilla.
Absolutely.
Run for your lives. The Godzilla Marathon is coming. 7 smash hit movies featuring the terror of Tokyo himself on New Year's Day.
I can't believe it.
You can win a giant 6-foot Godzilla or your very own Godzilla video. To enter, just send in your name, address, and telephone number. All entries must be received by December 27th. Then watch the Godzilla Marathon on New Year's Day and see if you're a winner. The LA Marathon is coming, but not before the Godzilla Marathon. 12 crunching hours of non-stop mayhem on New Year's Day. The dubbing is awful, the action is great, and it's hosted by Michelangelo of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. He'll be giving away prizes, including 6-foot inflatable Godzillas. You might be a winner. Watch the Godzilla Marathon on New Year's Day, only on Channel 13.
So, I know it might not be at the top of everybody's list if Godzilla comes to trash your neighborhood or whatever, but one thing you might want to keep in mind is that'd be a good time to go save some books from your local library, before it gets pulverized. And actually, I think you read something recently that people might be interested in hearing about before Godzilla incinerates it.
Yes, get it soon. I read this month was Bishop by Candace Nola. It was a creature feature. It's about, I was going to say a werewolf. It's about a werebear. And it takes place in the Alaskan backwoods. And the one thing that really came across me when I was reading it was just how she brought the whole backwoods to life. I was really impressed with her writing style and how I wrote a review on it. And it was just like how when I was sitting there reading it, I could almost feel the cold wind blowing when I was reading it, and it was almost like a character within itself. The backwoods, the snow, and but it's a really good story. It's based on these two women, mother and daughter, who go hiking, and they're experienced hikers, and they come across something very evil in the woods. And we have our main antagonist who comes in, and he's looking for his missing family members who haven't called in. And he goes searching for them, and all sorts of mayhem ensues. And I was going to say something, but I don't want it would ruin it. I thought it was very clever, but it was too clever, so I'm not going to actually spoil it.
Don't spoil the cleverness.
Yeah, it ruined the story. And but yeah, it's really good. It's
I always think it's interesting when you have the creature feature where there's also sort of the evil human element too, right? Because then you kind of get to juxtapose what's worse, the evil creature or the evil human.
Yeah, well, there's a twist. Yeah, I'm not saying anymore because people haven't read it. I don't want to ruin anything, but
yeah, I'm gonna put you in the spoiler corner. No spoilers.
Yeah, it was very clever what she did, and once again, it's a very compact book, so it's a quick read. You don't want to put it down, and once again, because it's a shorter work, you say too much and you just kind of ruin the whole thing for everyone.
Sure,
but yeah. It really moves along quick, and I give it 2 thumbs up, and I think you should definitely read it. I'm sure a lot of people already have because it gets a lot of buzz. But Bishop by Candace Nola, definitely check it out.
Excellent.
What about you? Anything new this month?
I decided to borrow a page from your book and actually read an audiobook this month. So I read something that I was very excited to check out, which is Aliens Vasquez by V. Castro, which is a book, unsurprisingly, set in the Aliens universe that follows, and this is definitely not a spoiler because it's covered in the synopsis for the book, but the descendants of the character Jeanette Vasquez from the movie Aliens. And also kind of covers a little bit of her backstory. Like sort of the first part of the book tends to focus more on what led her to her fate, let's say.
Okay.
And then the rest of the book, the bulk of the book, deals with her twin children, who she was basically separated from at birth, according to the sort of canonical narrative that's established in this book. And this was an interesting one for me. I definitely enjoyed it for the most part, but it also kind of made me think a little bit about like how tough it is to work in the context of an established intellectual property like this, right? Because a lot of the things I've been reading lately are sort of new universes or new settings or new concepts or whatever. It's been a while since I've read anything that was set in an established universe, right? Like it's been a while since I read a Star Trek book or a Star Wars book or a Aliens book or anything like that.
Right.
And so I was immediately reminded of just like what a hard tightrope that is to walk as an author, to like play in somebody else's universe like that. But I actually thought she did a really good job with that aspect of it. And like actually I think one of the strongest parts of the book is the way that it ties into and builds off of the sort of legacy of, particularly what's established in that second Alien film. And of course the characters that you would expect to be referenced as part of that. I will say, if I'm being 100% honest about it, I was a little disappointed in certain aspects of the book. There were some things that I didn't necessarily love about it, but I really wanted to talk about it here because I think it is something that we've talked about previously on the show, but I think this is a particularly good example of the idea of how something doesn't necessarily have to be perfect to be worthwhile and enjoyable, right? So it's like there's a lot of things that I really like and have had a good time experiencing that I wouldn't necessarily say are like 10 out of 10, knock it out of the park, grand slam experiences. Yeah. And I think there's nothing wrong with that, right? I think that's a perfectly good, reasonable mindset to have. And I've been kind of dismayed in recent years by this whole idea that's become so pervasive of like, if something's not a 10 out of 10 or a 5-star or whatever, it's not worth your time. And I feel like this is a great example to me of a book that, like, even though I didn't necessarily love it, I still would recommend it and think it's worth experiencing. And particularly think it's something that, like, people who are fans of the Aliens, universe and franchise would probably enjoy, checking out.
Are there lots of aliens?
There are aliens. Yes, they do make an appearance more than once. I will say, and I think this is something that other folks who've talked about the book have echoed publicly, so I don't think it's much of a spoiler to say that, like, certain aspects of the book might be a little surprising to people because it does delve into a lot of cultural stuff and a lot of, generational family type stuff, because obviously, like, a big part of the book is sort of establishing these new characters, right? And who they are and what they have going on. And, even though there's a lot of references being made to events from the Aliens films, and those things definitely do end up factoring very prominently in the story, particularly by the time we get to the end of things. There's a lot of time also spent just setting up the characters and establishing, their reality and their, like, existence, and sort of the aftermath of losing their mother and all that sort of thing, and how that plays into who they end up becoming as people. And so there's some interesting, like, cultural and philosophical aspects to the story that I think might be a little surprising to somebody if they're going into the book thinking, oh, this is just going to be a story about shooting aliens in the face, right? Like, but I appreciated that. I think actually that would probably be the second thing that I'd say was some of my favorite stuff about the book, is just the really good cultural representation and the really good effort to try to create new, sort of fleshed out, developed characters that are a continuation of what was established in the films. Now, again, to kind of balance that out a little bit, some of the characters and some of the plot stuff I didn't think was maybe as fleshed out or as developed as I would have liked. But the good stuff that's there is really good and definitely, I think, worth experiencing. So overall, definitely give it a thumbs up.
Are there any abandoned spaceships? Like derelict
Any
spaceships?
abandoned spaceships? No abandoned spaceships. Yeah, so that box does not get checked. So we're not having the literary version of Alien Isolation, as you've mentioned in previous episodes. So you're not gonna scratch that particular itch. I'm sorry to say.
It's more planetary.
Yeah, more of a planetary situation, more of a and that's one thing is this is like a full length novel, right? This is like a 300, I think 50 plus page novel. So there's quite a bit there, right? It's a fairly chunky book. So I don't feel bad mentioning some of these things or like confirming or denying certain things, because
Yeah.
really, no matter how much I tell you, there's going to be stuff that you're not going to know about, right?
Yeah.
There's going to be stuff that is going to be a surprise. So, that probably gives you some idea of like the depth of what's presented. So, you know, kind of go into it understanding that it's not going to be necessarily a quick read. I think like the audio book was almost 12 hours of audio. So that was definitely a commitment to get through that one.
And it sounded like a cool concept, sort of visiting a
Yeah.
character from a
definitely
franchise.
risky, right? Like I definitely have to give them credit for even having the guts to tackle that, right?
Yeah.
Because like that is a very beloved, very storied, very revered and respected thing, aliens. And that character in particular of Vasquez, I think is definitely a fan favorite among readers and well, not readers so much as moviegoers and film aficionados, right? She's definitely in that pantheon of like great sort of badass, memorable movie characters.
Yeah.
So to even go there, took some guts for sure. So yeah,
Super.
good times. So I believe you had a little audio adventure of your own here recently, right?
That's right, because I'm not going to be outdone. As soon as I found out you were listening to audiobooks, that got to get a non-audiobook. So I actually decided to go into your wheelhouse. This is more of like a science fiction suspense. It's called Recursion by Blake Crouch. And it's funny because I was looking for something to try, and I like the idea behind it. And it's in a nutshell, it's a suspense time travel, but not time travel like you've ever experienced before. And it's about this one character. She has a mother that has Alzheimer's, and she's trying to come up with a way to bring back memories, some to help her mother, maybe even cure her mother's disease. And like other sort of books or movies like that, things that you try to do for the good end up getting in wrong hands or don't quite work out the way they have. And things happen, and then it goes back where you're trying to stop things that happen. Now, I'll admit, some of the time I had to actually like go back a bit because there's timelines going back and forth, and it can sometimes be confusing. And so I had to. And when you're listening to an audiobook instead of reading it, you miss a section or something because you're crossing the road or what have you when you're walking. This one took a lot, but it's fast paced. The narration was excellent. The story was really cool. If you like sort of time travel adventure yarns, this would definitely be a good pick. I've only read a few time travel books, but maybe I should look for more because I seem to like each one that I've read. There was, I can't remember what it's called now, by Jack Finney. He wrote one. Of course, there was A Time Machine. Lightning by Dean Koontz was actually is my favorite Dean Koontz book. But this Recursion is really cool. It has the science fiction, you name it. It's got science fiction. It's got apocalyptic stuff. It's got the adventure. It's the story is really something. So if you're looking for an interesting time traveling adventure book. Recursion by Blake Crouch is definitely one to check out.
Nice.
I have a
Yeah.
question before we go on, though.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed one of your books have disappeared behind you. It's like question marks.
Yes. I was wondering if you were going to notice that. Yeah. So I was going to mention at some point here, and this is a good time as any, I guess, that I actually am going to be announcing a new book here very shortly. And this is sort of the first hint of what's to come with that. And people who are familiar with my previous book here, 309, will be very interested in, I think, what this book ends up being. And that is what I'm going to leave it at for now. But probably by the time this episode airs, you will not have too long to wait to see what this new book is actually all about and when you'll be able to get your mitts on it, as it were.
Perfect. It'll be a Happy New Year baby book.
Yes, indeed. Although it will definitely
babies.
not be available quite that soon, but little tease, a little bit to tantalize you and whet your appetite for what's coming there.
Something to look forward to.
Nice. Thank you. But getting back to Recursion for a second. I always think it's interesting because I personally am not like a huge fan of just straight up time travel stories. I always think it's much more interesting when the time travel is linked to some other element, right? Like a post-apocalyptic element or some other wrinkle or facet of storytelling beyond just, going through time and tinkering with stuff, right? Because that sort of thing's been done so many times by so many great authors over the years, right? Like going all the way back to like stuff like Sound of Thunder, Ray Bradbury and all that. But like, I'm curious, like, what would you say, having read that book, is like the percentage of like time travel focus versus like other elements in that book? Like, is it real heavy on the time travel stuff, or is the time travel more just like a component?
So it's not like when we're going back to the dinosaurs to, see the T-Rex or whatever. This is
right.
It's shorter spans that are affecting people's lives. And not only is it the time travel part, but you're dealing with things that are occurring because of people who've meddled with this time travel, and it's affecting people in different ways, which I also won't get into too much. But it's a multifaceted book. It's a really unique travel one. Once again, it's one of those books that I was like, why didn't I think of that?
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, it's original.
Nice. Well, I know Blake Crouch has definitely like gotten a lot of kudos in the science fiction community over the years. I know, like in particular, his book Dark Matter is like highly regarded by a lot of different people in the genre. So definitely probably need to add that one to my list for sure at some point. But
it was really good. And I don't read a lot of science fiction, but maybe I will. Maybe I'll start to, because I really I gravitate toward like really original ideas. And this one, when I was flicking through stuff, I thought that sounded really interesting. So it did not let me down.
Sci-fi is definitely the genre for that.
Yeah.
Nice. Cool. Well, speaking of books and reading and doing things original and different, I did want to talk a little bit about a couple of topics that I think folks might find interesting who are into reading in general. One of which is something that I'm actually trying for the first time myself in the new year, which is a buddy read. So folks who watch the show, and if you don't, why not, might recall us talking about the book Black House back when we mentioned Peter Straub's passing a few episodes ago. And that actually prompted my sister to talk to me about doing a buddy read for that book, because I had mentioned how it had been on my TBR forever, and she kind of is in the same boat. And we said, well, why don't we read it together? And I was curious, and I think I already know the answer to this. Have you ever buddy read a book with anybody?
Yeah, no.
No, not your thing? Yeah.
No, too much pressure. Too much pressure. I just, I mean, it'd be interesting. Like I'd thought at one point, do like a, book club, because I have some family members that do book club, and, they sit down, they discuss it. Oh, that'd be kind of fun. But then I'd be like, I wouldn't be done in time, or I wouldn't finish because of my schedule. And then I'd feel like I was under pressure. I like to read at my own,
It's your own pace.
leisure. And it just is too much pressure for me to buddy read.
Yeah. Well, I think the way we're kind of approaching it is going to be fairly low key, right? We're not really setting a deadline or anything like that. We're just saying, hey, we're both going to do this. We're going to kind of check in with each other periodically and see how far we've gotten, maybe talk about the parts that we've both already read. It's going to be a fairly chill, relaxed sort of experience, because I've seen a lot of people do that over the years, especially in the BookTube community, where like people will get together and like sort of do analysis of books, or sort of partner up with somebody who's maybe had more experience with a book than they have, so they can get more insight into it as they're reading it and that sort of thing. And I think that aspect of it is kind of cool. But also I think it's just a good motivator, right? Like it's a good way to just say, okay, this is a book that I know I want to read and this other person wants to read. And regardless of how long it takes for us to get through it, eventually we will. And then if nothing else, I know I have at least one other person I can talk to about that book.
Right. Yeah.
Because a lot of times I'll read books and I'm pretty sure that like nobody else I know is ever going to read that book. And it's kind of a bummer, right? Because you got nobody to talk to about it.
Yeah.
But so that'll be an interesting experiment. Like I said, that'll be my first time officially trying to do a quote unquote buddy read. So I'll let you all know how that goes.
It'll be interesting.
Yeah. We'll see if I'm still talking to my sister afterwards.
Yeah.
That'll be a good indicator.
Well, hopefully you both enjoy the book.
Yeah.
Or both dislike
or
it at the
both
same
or both
time.
don't enjoy the book and take commiserate about that. Yeah. I have a feeling I'm probably going to end up liking it. I mean, that's how it's how it ended up on my TBR in the first place. So I think that there's a good chance it's got a good shot. The other thing I'm kind of debating is whether or not I'm going to do it as an audio book or a physical read. So that's something I'm still deciding. If anybody has any ideas about that, if anybody has read it and wants to suggest one way or the other, drop a comment or something. But getting back to BookTube, which I had mentioned previously, that was something else I wanted to talk about, at least briefly here, before we wrap up the books segment, because it's been about, I'd say, a little over a year now since I really started getting into watching BookTube videos and that sort of thing on YouTube. And it's really kind of opened my eyes over the past year to just how kind of big and important and interesting that community has become in terms of like really driving people's book recommendations and kind of the conversation around books online. And it's not even really limited to YouTube, but even things like Instagram with the whole Bookstagram tag, and TikTok with the whole Book Talk tag, and all these sort of outlets on social media for people just talking publicly about books in really kind of interesting ways. Have you kind of noticed this trend over the past few years?
Yeah, I'm just happy that there's people still reading.
right?
It's refreshing to know, and not only do they're reading, but they're enjoying it and willing to discuss it. And there's lots of people that are watching them, so it shows the people who the naysayers saying that books and reading are dead. Definitely not the case.
Yeah, I mean they're not doing like video game content numbers, right? Or like some of the other things out there that are more popular, right? Like car stuff or the things that tend to dominate on YouTube in terms
Yeah.
of viewership. But I mean, it is kind of impressive when you really stop and look at just how many videos are being made a month about books, talking about them in some cases very extensively and very in depth. And it really just does kind of give you hope for literacy and the
Yeah.
value of reading and all that sort of thing. Like even in this day and age where it seems to be on the decline in so many other areas, it really seems like, at least on social media, it's had like a real resurgence in a lot of ways.
Well, they're a great avenue too to find new books, because
Mm-hmm.
they have their fingers in a lot of pies, and they get a lot of arcs and stuff beforehand, and they spread the word out so people find out stuff. I mean, I know there's some of the shows and episodes that I watch
Mm-hmm.
regularly to get book reading ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Plus,
Yeah,
they
we've
give you a
talked about
view.
some of those on the
Yeah,
show previously. Things like Nerdy Narrative and Voices from the
there's,
Mausoleum and stuff like that.
yeah. There's like Steve Talks Books, Nerdy
Mm-hmm.
Narrative. There's Jay and Brad from Paper Cuts. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, well-read Beard. I get
Mm-hmm.
onto their shows and I look to see what they're reading, pick and choose
Mm-hmm.
which ones I like, put them on my TBR list. I
Mm-hmm.
should start sending them a bill at the end of each
Yeah,
month for all the
yeah, they're
books that I end
definitely
up
gonna
buying.
grow in the TBR, that's for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's like, oh, that sounds really good. And then you kind of look over and go, ah, all right, whatever, I'll get it anyways.
nice.
Yeah,
Well, and I mean, just again, speaking from an author perspective, right? Like I definitely have to give a lot of credit and a big shout out to some of the people who've talked about my books on their channel. People like Fit to Be Read and the Book Wormhole and Book Buds and Jeremy Fee, who's also an author. He's a kind of an author tuber, having written some poetry books and stuff and being featured in some collections, some short story collections and whatnot. But those folks have definitely done a lot to help like jumpstart people's awareness of my stuff,
right.
via their channels and via their platforms. So that definitely would be remiss to not throw them out there
Yeah.
and all the others who I may have missed.
Well, we thank all the booktubers for getting the word out, keeping reading alive. It's as he said in the Holy Grail or Monty Python, we're not dead yet.
Yep, I feel happy. Good times.
Yes, sir.
All right, well, as is the case, I think it is time to transition to another fun topic, which we seem to enjoy returning to time and time again, which not surprisingly also is sort of tied into books in its own way. But you had a TV show that you were watching recently that you're kind of getting into that you wanted to talk about for a bit.
Altered Carbon.
Mm-hmm.
It was a really have you watched any of it?
So I watched the first two episodes, sort of in preparation to have this discussion, and I also should say I am a little bit familiar with the concept because the book actually came out. The book that the show is based off of came out in 2002,
Right.
and I actually had some awareness of that book when it was released. But unfortunately, it was during a time when my reading was at an all-time low because it was kind of just as I was getting started in my previous career as a software engineer, and just
Right.
like all of my time was spent in that universe.
Yeah.
But I remember seeing that book pop up a bunch in the early 2000s and like reading a little bit about it and like the whole concept of like skins and stacks and all of like the cool tech that's like associated with that premise. But why don't you go ahead and let the people know like what's up with this thing in case they're not familiar with it?
Yeah, well, in the future, you don't have to die. You can be regenerated into different, as you mentioned, skins, which is like another body, either an artificial or clone body. The really good reactivated lives are by the very rich, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're at, I guess, young or at birth, they have a thing called a stack, and they put it's in your spinal area, and it's, I guess, connected to your brain, so it keeps everything sort of formulated so it can be taken out and put into another life form. And of course, there's people that don't believe in it, think that people should just, when they die, that this is not God's will. So you have different sort of beliefs. And then on top of that, you have another whole story, about this one particular person who's brought back from, I guess, sort of a pseudo prison that he was in.
I believe they call it putting him on ice.
Yeah. And he has been out for a while, and he's given a new skin and tasked with finding the killer of somebody. So the person that actually sprung him and paid to get him out is a powerful person, and he's been murdered. Although he's alive now because, of course, his
backup
stack was taken care of. So he's supposed to solve this mystery, and if he is, then he can, stay alive. And then on top of that, there's a whole world building thing where they find out about this world that this is all based on, and how I'm guessing they're like, they're humans in the series, but they come down, and there was, I'm not going to spoil it, that like a life force before that left sort of artifacts. And some of them are still active. So there's that storyline too. So you've got the main character's storyline. You've got the mystery part. You've got that sort of whole science fiction sort of part. You've got this world that's basically built on top of an older world.
Yeah. There's clearly been some sort of calamitous, event that has wrecked the world, and now it's sort of been rebuilt with what's remaining, essentially.
Well, actually, it was built by outsiders, so they're not native. These people who arrived, they were travelers, space travelers that came to. And it's, once again, these kind of, when you get into these kind of stories, because they're very original stuff, you say too much and it'll ruin certain things.
Because I was going to say, I think even me being into episode 2, that hadn't been revealed yet. So we definitely want to be careful where we tread here.
So lots of layers in this one. Very original. Give it some time, because at the beginning you might be wondering what exactly is happening.
Well, I will say, having just watched those first 2 episodes, I was definitely almost immediately hooked and engaged, and I definitely will end up watching the rest of it, and especially knowing that it's only 2 seasons, because I guess it didn't make it past that point in like the never-ending carousel of prematurely canceled Netflix series. But what was there, what I experienced in those first 2 episodes was definitely really interesting and compelling, and grabbed me right away.
The characters are really they
Yeah.
did a good job building them too, so you get caught up with that.
Yeah. So I'd be willing to go out on a limb and recommend that one too, even just having seen the first couple episodes so far.
And it's a proper wrap up. People worried, got canceled or whatever. It's like just watching the two still satisfying.
That's good. That's good to know,
Yeah.
for sure. There's definitely been some series that have not had that benefit. Although I think showrunners are getting a bit more savvy about that sort of thing now, where like they're almost ready to like pivot on a dime and like wrap a series up in an episode or two if they get the word that the axe is about to fall. Because there's been quite a few series over the past several years that have kind of prematurely gotten the can. And actually, I think that's something probably worth mentioning, right? Like, I know I've got a couple that I was pretty fond of and was pretty disappointed to see go away. I'll just throw one out there right off the top of my head, which is Defiance. If you ever saw that show, which was, I think, a victim of the Sci-Fi Channel's desire to try to create the next Battlestar Galactica with every show that they made, and not quite managing it in terms of ratings, and then promptly punting it before its time, despite it being quite good.
Yeah. I would say, like, for me, it's like Firefly.
Oh yeah, it's a very, very popular one that I think people are still very much pining for to this day,
Yeah.
even though things like Serenity have been made. Like
Yeah.
the Firefly fans will never be truly satisfied, I think.
Yeah. So
Another one too that I was a really super big fan of was Into the Badlands on AMC. I feel like that show was like criminally underrated and was a really good time.
I only watched a few of the first couple episodes. I don't know why I stopped. It probably came out when there's a lot of other stuff coming out too.
Mhm.
But yeah.
Yeah, the landscape of television was pretty crowded at that point, so I could definitely see how that one could have gotten overlooked. And I think for sure a lot of people have come to that show late, kind of discovering it after it had already been canceled. And I will
Right.
say that's one where like the ending works, like the end of the third season functions as an ending, but it definitely leaves you with a lot of unanswered questions and a lot of like head scratching and a lot of like, oh man, I really wish this went on and went further. But I would argue that that's a show that's so good that even though the ending isn't super like, wrapped up in a nice bow or like ultra satisfying, like that's still a show that I feel like is worth watching just because it's so exceptionally good on so many levels. But yeah, it's always a bummer. It's one of those things where, we've talked about it previously on the show, where it's like shows don't really get a chance to get going sometimes before the plug gets pulled, and it really bums me out, especially if I don't happen to discover something right away and don't get really the chance to have a vote as a viewer as to whether or not the thing should stick around.
Yeah. It's almost like it's like music. The bands aren't given the time to grow, and like in the old days,
Mm-hmm.
everything's like it's got to be now, 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 now.
Mm-hmm.
But
Well, speaking of music, and speaking of bands that definitely had the time to grow and mature, I think that leads us to our next music segment. I'm going to make the thing drive across the screen again because it's hilarious. So, what we've kind of decided is that with some of these topics moving forward, we're actually going to take turns picking what we talk about. And I got to pick this time, and I'm going to do something that's probably going to aggravate some people, but I'm going to do it anyway, because we're going to talk about my favorite band, Rush.
yeah,
And my favorite album of theirs, Hold Your Fire. Am I inserting the cricket noises here?
It's a fine album.
Yeah.
It's got Time Stands Still.
Mm-hmm.
Time Stands Still. Look at me. I should be a singer.
Hey man, Amy Mann's gonna come for those royalties if you don't watch yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
I used to hear stories about how she used to get so mad and salty when like Rush fans would come up to her with copies of that album and ask for her autograph, like at her shows and stuff like that. I heard she was
Really?
not a fan of that. But anyway, I know, somewhat unpopular choice, but let me make my case here. Right, let me make my argument for this one.
Please do.
Yeah, so I am a huge Mongoose Rush fan. I've seen them live 8 times
Wow.
throughout the course of their existence and my like time being a fan of theirs. And one thing I would say is that to me, Hold Your Fire is a really important album because it represents a couple of different things that I think they do better than just about any other band out there. And one of those things is that balance between sophistication and complexity and accessibility in their songwriting. And I don't think that any of their other albums manifest that in quite the same way that Hold Your Fire does, because it's that, for me, that sort of intangible sweet spot between songs that are very competent and intricate and clever musically while still being immediately accessible, right? When you hear a lot of the songs on that album, like A Time Stands Still or Force 10 or Lock and Key or any of like the bigger sort of more popular songs from that album, they're the sort of songs where when you hear them for the first time, you feel like you've heard them your whole life, right? Like you feel like that song is immediately recognizable and immediately clicks in a way that where like it doesn't really have to grow on you. You don't really have to parse it to comprehend it. They're the sort of songs that you can immediately click with and resonate with on even like the first or second listen. But then as you listen to them repeatedly and over again, and you reveal the sort of intricacies and details and subtleties and nuances of the songwriting, in terms of the song structure and the lyrical content and all those sorts of details, all the production flourishes and everything, those songs have a lot of depth to them as well that I think only becomes really revealed as you get further in to the listening experience and have those repeated listenings. And now, of course, that's not to say that a lot of their other albums don't have those same qualities, but for me, that album really manifests all of those things in a way that I think goes above and beyond what any of their other albums do, at least for me. Now, the other thing I'll say before you rebuke everything that I just said is that the other thing that I really love about that album is how sort of gracious and accommodating Alex Lifeson was in his guitar playing on it. Because when you see interviews with them talking about that album and like him in particular, he really let himself take a back seat on that album because Geddy and Neil had things that they wanted to do musically that were sort of like where their kind of hearts and minds were in terms of what they wanted to present. The things they were into, the sort of lyrical themes that they wanted to explore, the sort of song ideas they wanted to explore. And the thing I always found really sort of almost sweet about that album is the way Alex kind of just takes a back seat and finds like his own way to like make his guitar parts fit into what's going on with the rest of that album in a way that's very like generous and very like accommodating to their like desires artistically. And I don't think there's a lot of bands where like people would have been willing to put their own ego and their own like creative desires and efforts aside like that to let the other people in the band have their moment and have their thing that they were trying to do, and without the band like imploding or like, you know, everything just kind of falling apart. Like, I think that album really just goes to show how tight those guys were, not just as a band, but in terms of like being friends and being like accommodating of each other and supportive of each other, to the point where even though he wasn't like fully on board with what they were doing creatively, he like threw himself at it so completely. It came up with some really innovative and interesting and cool guitar stuff to work within the confines of what they had created, you know, for him to fill in. And so like that to me is one of the reasons why I always like kind of hold that album up as like a special thing, because I don't think a lot of other bands could have pulled it off musically or sort of emotionally, right? Like I don't think a lot of other bands would have had the sort of integrity to create a project like that. So that's all I wanted to say. Go ahead, eviscerate me.
I can't, because the main reason I can't is because there are no bad Rush albums.
Nice.
At all. One of my favorite bands, of course, a fine Canadian band, fine Canadian trio. It's, I mean, Hold Your Fire wouldn't be my pick, of course, but you know, growing up with them when they were a Toronto band, the early work always is going to be a bigger player. But having said that, moving forward, I mean, like Bastille Day, Working Man, I mean, are sort of nuggets that are instilled inside of me. But for me, I would have to go like 2112. It's it was just such a cool album. You know, it's like a whole concept, you know, album. It's where they really came into their own.
Yep. Well, it's basically the album that saved their career, right?
Yeah.
Because it was kind of their last chance with their record company. You know, if that album hadn't taken off and sold the way that it did, there wouldn't have been any more albums, right? That was their make or break moment, really.
Yeah. I like Hemispheres as well. I liked, but still not the same as 2112. But
Farewell to Kings. Do you go the full Space trilogy?
Yeah, it's I guess for me it'd be 2112, Moving Pictures, because of course it has Tom Sawyer,
right?
The most I mean, I think everyone in the world, as soon as you hear that beginning, everybody
that opening
knows
synthesizer and drum hit, right, is ingrained into the collective consciousness at this point, I would say. Yeah. And
Permanent Waves was another big movie, another big album for me too.
Yeah. I mean, so Spirit of the Radio, Free Will, all that stuff. Yeah.
So those big impressions. As I said, the Hemisphere, I had the album was back when they used to make colored albums. So you'd have your normal black
picture
album,
discs.
but this one had the red. Yeah, it was a red album. And,
nice.
So it was cool. But 2112, I remember when I first heard it, it was just like, never heard anything like it.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. And then they kind of, you know, changed it up, and with I wouldn't say, because I'd never say they're mainstream, because they were always seem to be cutting edge with their sounds and what they tried to do. But Moving Pictures was it was a big album. Yeah. But it was more accessible to other people, not just like hardcore fans like you or I kind of thing, who were like from the beginning, because there's a lot of people who didn't like that they were moving into a more
mainstream kind of
mainstream sound, you know, the hardcore. No, it's got to be, you know, the old,
it's got to be progressive rock or nothing.
But I really enjoyed Moving Pictures and Permanent Waves. I'd say they'd even knock out Hemispheres for me, because it was always 2112 Hemispheres, because that was just the time where what music was really influencing me and that stick with you at that time of your life, that it never leaves you. But those two would usurp Hemispheres. It would be like 2112, Moving Pictures, and Permanent Waves were my
when it's funny, right? Because when you think about it, right, it makes a lot of sense, right? Because you are about 10 years older than me, right? So my time period to be like mostly affected by music would have been, 87 instead of 77, right?
Yeah.
And so there you have it, right? That's there's the key, I think, to the whole thing. But yeah, it's bananas just how much good to excellent music that they came up with, right, throughout their career, and also their ability to reproduce that music in a live setting is pretty much unparalleled, right? Like I don't know that you could realistically, like, reasonably make an argument for there being like a better live band than them. I know I'm probably gonna take some heat for that from the internet, but whatever, bring it. I don't care.
They were, well, proof is in the pudding. My wife's not a huge Rush fan, and they came, and I mean, I'd seen them several times, but they came back to Ottawa, and I said, let's go see them. And she was like, I don't know, but she went. And it was one of those, there's been a few that I've brought her to where just changed her mind. They are really great. Some she was like, yeah, I still don't like them. But Rush was not one of them. She went and it converted her. So she'll actually listen to Rush now. So the problem too is it's like a lot of people, they listen to Geddy's voice and they don't give it a chance.
Taste.
And people who don't even really listen to them, but hear other people go on about it. So it's like, oh yeah, it's Geddy Lee's voice, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, well, wait till you hear them. Actually listen to a whole album or watch them live. And she did, and she's a convert. So
what I mean, going back to 2112 for a second, like, just those live renditions of the overture, right, when he's just like wailing on the mic, and he's just like, and if you ever heard him do it live, his voice would overpower the amplification, right? So if you were anywhere near the stage, you were hearing him, more than you were hearing the amp, right? And that was like an awe-inspiring kind of experience, right? That'll put like chills up your spine. Like, there was very few people that had that level of like power and control in their voice. And of course he had all sorts of problems with his voice, like later on, in their career, as a result of all that like hard singing he did back in the 70s. And like had to go through like a lot of effort to preserve his voice and keep it going, up till their sort of retirement. But man, that dude, like, I get it, right? Like I get that, like, not everybody's a fan of the way his voice sounds, but like just the technical excellence of like his control over his voice, I think, is pretty hard to argue with.
Yeah, and they were all such gifted musicians. I mean, Neil Peart was such a loss when he passed away.
Oh yeah,
it was just, what a drummer.
Devastating. Yeah.
But all three of them were, and I think they're like, when you read articles, you see like different documentaries on them, it's like they were so articulate and so always trying to better themselves. They weren't just spewing out same stuff. This stuff, they were perfectionists. They just, it had to be the best. They had to try something new. So
well, and that's the thing, right? When you do try new things, it's not always going to resonate with everybody, right? But that was definitely one of the things I loved the most about them, is all their evolutions, right? Because it's like every 3 or 4 albums that they put out, it would be a different sound or a different
Yeah.
like wrinkle or a different take on what they had done previously, right? Because like, you know, you talk about like the space trilogy albums, right? Like 2112 and Farewell to Kings and Hemispheres. That's kind of like an era unto itself. And then you have like Moving Pictures and Permanent Waves and Signals. That's kind of like an era unto itself. And
Yeah.
then of course my personal favorite, you know, being like Grace Under Pressure, Into Power Windows, Into Hold Your Fire, right? Like I consider
Yeah.
that to be like a little era unto itself of them like doing, you know, what they were doing there musically. And then like into the 90s, you know, it's another those albums leading into the 90s like Presto and Roll the Bones and Counterparts. That's another little pocket of their existence. And so it's kind of crazy when you think about just how many evolutions and iterations they went through as a band, but never broke from the core of who they were and never really had any kind of major falling outs or drama or anything like that, right? They just showed up and did the work for like 40 years.
Yeah.
Like how many bands can say that?
And they never sold out. They stuck to their beliefs and what their vision was and kept at it.
Yep. Yeah.
Fabulous band.
Mad respect, forever respect for those guys, just because I feel like they earned it.
Kudos to you for picking such a fine band.
Thank you. I couldn't have really picked anyone else at the end of the day. Like that's my favorite band for sure by like a mile. But you know, there are some others I will definitely mention in future episodes that I have a similar affinity for. But yeah, Rush definitely gets their own little pedestal to stand on, I think, in my brain.
Perfect.
So much so that I actually called a little bit of an audible here, and we actually ended up talking about them before video games, which is actually what we're going to talk about now, because I was so excited I took us out of order there, but that's okay, right? You're ready to tell the world about your latest video game obsession, right?
The Last of Us. It's a
Yeah.
fun game. If you like sad, depressing.
I was gonna say fun is not the
Apocalypse.
word that would have popped into my mind hearing The Last of Us, but go ahead, explain yourself.
Yeah. No, it's once again kind of a survival horror type of thing. It's got a great storyline. You know, this kind gentleman who's not all that kind is going to try to escort this woman through a very unpleasant landscape. And
Yeah, it's Pittsburgh, isn't it?
it's they really built a cool world, and it's now they're making a movie out of it. It's coming out in the new year, and yeah, it was loads of fun. I have to be honest, it's been a while since I've played it, because of course I jumped on it when it first came out. Yeah. And then, as I said, all the buzz now with the film coming out, it's you know, making me want to pull it out again and give it another spin through.
Now, did you play The Last of Us 2, or did you just completely nope out on that one?
Yeah, just the first one.
I know the second one is very divisive. I know there's a lot of people who love it and a lot of people who not so much. But I have not actually played either of them.
Okay.
However, I do understand the love for that first game, especially because it definitely seemed to be doing a lot of really cool stuff. Not the least of which being a pretty cool multiplayer mode that it had that people seem to overlook and forget about, which apparently a lot of people really liked.
Well, it was, you know, you had to sort of make decisions that you know, you didn't know what if this decision, what it was gonna, cause, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Do you let this person die,
Mm-hmm.
or do you let them live? Do you shoot this person in the head? Is it going to come back to haunt you? You think it's a good idea, but maybe
Right.
there's ramifications for doing such a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a really cool part of it. And it was very, I don't want to say it was dark, which it just, a lot of sadness.
Mm-hmm.
Like post-apocalyptic, is not always fun.
You don't
Not
say.
a fun world. Yeah.
I wouldn't have imagined such a thing.
Yeah, it's not all hopping around in a cool sports car with your German Shepherd by your side, hunting down vampiric zombie types, and living
Mm-hmm.
large.
Mm-hmm.
This one's is gritty. Everything's gritty. I mean, the people who survived are garbage. The creatures are garbage. It's just like, it's not a great place to live. It's certainly not a great place to be a young girl.
No. I would think the struggle would definitely be real on that front, for sure.
But yeah, some of the decisions that you make, you're just kind of like, I don't want to make these decisions.
Right. There's no good choice here.
Yeah, it's just it was very it was pretty harsh. But I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens. I just hope they don't blow the movie.
Yeah.
I hope they did a good job. But they've got, it looks really cool.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll
yeah, I would be interested to check out the movie for sure, even though I haven't played the games. And playing the games is definitely not off the table for me. It's just The Last of Us kind of had that unfortunate luck of coming out right after I had really started to get more into playing multiplayer games.
right.
And then kind of shying more away from single player experiences. Like, I think I've mentioned it on the show before, but I'm kind of down to the point now where I only play like a handful of single player games a year these days. And so the Last of Us has just never made that cut for me. But it's one that I have thought about a lot. Like a lot of those really big tentpole Sony games, right? Like Horizon Zero Dawn and Days Gone and all those big God of War, like those big single player experiences are always kind of tantalizing for me. And I feel like I never would take them off the table completely in terms of like something I might pick up and play. It's just other things tend to distract me these days, especially like if it's co-op or multiplayer or whatever. That's kind of my jam lately.
Yeah, well, this one's very immersive. I mean, you get right into the world, and it's realistic with the decisions that you have to make. There's no easy decisions. The characters are really good. It's just to go through like the bleak world that they're in is something else. That'd probably be one of the reasons a lot of people didn't like it. It's like, when you could be spinning webs and like flying around, the town in your web slinging, outfit. It's, to play something that's so dark and asks so much of you, emotionally. People are just like, yeah, I just not. I want to play for fun and adventure and have it done. This one just like, but it's just the realism
experience
and
the power fantasy, which is a lot of games are sort of built around that, right? It's like I'm gonna be a superhero. I'm gonna win everything and smash everything. Yeah.
But I mean, they're making a movie out of it, so someone saw the potential in it.
Yeah,
definitely a game to check out. You can probably get it dirt cheap too now. Well, now the movie's coming out, they probably try to raise the rates again or prices.
Well, I know they just did a remastered version of it, or are in the process of doing a remastered version of it for the PS5, and I assume that will come to PC at some point because all of the Sony stuff is coming to PC these days.
I can imagine how cool that would look.
Yeah, I think that might be where they actually get me with that one.
Yeah.
You know, if that remastered version of the first one comes to Steam, that might be something I'd have to give a go. But you know, to your point, I think the great thing about games like that is the fact that you do have to be in a mood or in the right mindset for them, right? Because I think there's something about entertainment that's just meant to be universal or meant to be like easy to ingest that I think sometimes makes it a little less impactful than something that asks more of you as a consumer, right? Like, and that's why I think things that are quirky or darker or more demanding tend to resonate with people in a way that's something that kind of goes easy on you just can't in a lot of ways, you know. And I think that's just sort of the price that those entities pay is you're not going to get everybody with a game like that, but the people who you do get, it's really going to resonate with them and click with them and leave a lasting impression on them. And I think that's really cool, right? That stuff like that can still exist where it doesn't have to be this big like blockbuster, you know, tent pole, you know, thing. Although, yeah, I guess you could argue Last of Us was a huge hit, but I don't think that was a foregone conclusion, right? Like, I don't think they were necessarily expecting that game would be the success that it was when they made it. And maybe that's part of what made it a success.
Well, I think I mean, you would have missed if you got, like, for myself, you got caught up in the hype at the beginning when you saw the first, you know, trailers and the little bit of things they were throwing out. I was like, oh, I can't wait this, because it just the look of it and how well all the graphics were put together. It was just it was something. So if you hadn't really seen the trailers and been engaged in the sort of buildup of it, it could have come and gone without you really playing. Oh, it's another post-apocalyptic, you know, you're running around and zombies are after you. But it wasn't like that at all. So I think, but it's just, and it's tough because of this decision making and stuff too. You can look at both ways. One, you can play it again and make a different decision, you know, which is cool. But because it's kind of very story arcish, a lot of people's like, wow, what's the story's done? I don't want to like relive.
Or it's like the first
thing.
experience you had is your story, and you don't necessarily want to change that, right? Because you did it the way you wanted to do it, and now that's like your sort of canon version of the story is the choices that you made.
So it's but the Last of Us, if you haven't played it, should check it out before the movie comes out.
Indeed.
That way you're the director of your own movie.
Nice. Good times.
Exactly. What about you? What do you have for us today?
Well, kind of keeping in that vein, because I knew you were going to talk about Last of Us. I wanted to talk about sort of the multiplayer sort of spin on that sort of concept of the whole post-apocalyptic survival, you know, concept, which is a game that I think is, in my mind, probably one of the most influential titles that's happened in the past 10 years or so, which is a game called DayZ. And for those who aren't aware of it, which probably is a lot of people, surprisingly, it's a post-apocalyptic zombie sandbox survival game set in a fictitious Eastern European country. And in terms of plot and any sort of like structured gameplay experience, there's really not a lot to speak of there. Where this game kind of excels and sort of stands head and shoulders above a lot of other experiences that I've had as a game player is in the sort of dynamic, spontaneous, you know, just unpredictable elements that can occur within it. Because basically you have this huge map, this, you know, 140 plus square kilometer map with all this terrain and these cities and these military bases and little towns and secret areas and stuff that you can discover that's just full of all this loot, right? This equipment, food, the means to create your own bases and facilities and stuff. And also a bunch of other players who are trying to get all that same stuff for themselves and make sure that you don't exist anymore. And so basically when you play a game of DayZ, you hop into this map and you basically have nothing, right? You start out with like the clothes on your back and like maybe a handful of little basic survival items, and then you start running around this huge map and, you know, going into buildings, trying to get stuff, you know, looking under tables, looking under couches, trying to find like any scraps of whatever you can scrounge together to build like an existence for yourself. And at any given moment, you can come across another player and they can talk to you through voice chat, and they might be friendly. They might want something from you. They might kill you on sight. They might try to like do the long con on you and like pretend to be your friend and try to get you to do a bunch of dangerous stuff for them, and then, you know, whack you after they got what they wanted out of you. There's a lot of like crazy psychology and crazy just one of a kind game experiences that happen in that game that I don't think I've ever really seen manifest in any other game that I've played.
Yeah.
But that game had a really crazy sort of tumultuous development process, because it basically started out as a mod for a game called Arma 2. And so for the first several years of its existence, that's all it really was this really super popular mod where like people would literally go and buy the game Arma 2 just to play this DayZ mod, you know, on the game. And they'd actually have Steam sales and stuff on Arma just so more people could get the game to play the mod. And then eventually the mod became so popular that the company that made Arma bought the rights to it and actually hired the guy who came up with the mod to make a standalone version of the DayZ game. That lasted for about a year before he went off to greener pastures, basically took his big bag of money and went off and made his own game company. And then a bunch of other people just spent years essentially trying to take that concept and turn it into like a fully fledged game, which actually ended up taking several more years. So like from the time the mod came out in 2012 to the time the actual game came out in its like initial 1.0 version was like 2018. So you're talking like a 6+ year development cycle just to get like the first version of the game out the door. And then ever since then, they've just kind of been building on that and trying to like continue to refine it and improve upon it. And it's been crazy to watch that unfold. Like there's so many people playing games now who that game is older than them.
Yeah.
It's still like still a thing that like tens of thousands of people play every day, and it's still like actively being worked on and has this like crazy community of people that have like built up around it. You know, we talked about stuff like BookTube and that sort of thing earlier, like the community that built up in on Twitch around people streaming that game and like doing like role-playing streams and, you know, survival streams and stuff like that. And another thing that a lot of people probably aren't aware of is that like the whole battle royale concept, right? Like the whole idea of like what battle royale games like Apex Legends and PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds and, you know, things like that are so popular now, like Call of Duty Warzone. The concept of that was very much rooted in the Arma 2 mod scene, because the original battle royale mod was another Arma 2 mod, and so like and even like an original event for like DayZ whenever that game was first becoming popular was they did a thing called the Survivor Games, which was basically like the DayZ spin on the battle royale concept. And this was like years and years before even PlayerUnknown came out. And so like just the legacy of that game and like the influence and the impact that it's had on like the development of the game industry over the past 10 years or so is like, I just feel like it can't be overstated. It's a pretty incredible project, like the history of it and like the impact that it's had.
Games, so much fun.
Oh yeah, yeah. You can never have enough. But I guess I would throw DayZ out there as the alternative for the multiplayer kids, right? If you want that post-apocalyptic zombie survival experience and you don't really care about story and you just are into the multiplayer and the PvE and the PvP, that might be the road to take. So you're kind of covered both ways, single player or otherwise.
So there you go. So if you want a standalone, just sitting on your couch play, Last of Us. You want to get in there with the potential of someone coming up and stealing all your stuff? DayZ.
There you go.
We got you covered here on the post.
We got to cover everybody's bases. We got a diverse audience pool here now that we're growing as a show here. We got to make sure we service everybody's needs.
Exactly.
Well, speaking of which, I think I might need a nap after all of that because we just talked about a lot of stuff, as is our way.
Yes.
But, yeah.
I was going to take a nap, but instead I'm going to go watch that Godzilla marathon.
Excellent. Godzilla. It's another thing we need to talk about more extensively at some point, but I'll add that to the list. You can look forward to that, everybody. We just wait for that Godzilla conversation.
Yeah. Whole episode. Godzilla.
Nice. All right. Well, let's get out of here. We will see you all again next time. And
Happy New Year. Very clever.
Good times.
Congratulations. You just survived the post-mortem report. For more information about the show, the hosts, or the things they talked about, check out our super swanky information page at anchor.fm/postmortemreport. Until next time, always remember, good posts never die.